Dímelo YouTube, hoy vamos a hacer otro video donde yo voy a ver 14 historias de horrores animadas de Llama Arts. Espérate. De Llama Arts. Que es un youtuber que sabe hacer animaciones de historias de horrores, ¿verdad? Pues, ¿verdad? Yo voy a poner el link del video en la descripción y un shout out para Llama Arts también. Tipo bien cool. A suscribirme porque no estoy suscribido, bendito. A cositas más bonitas, ¿verdad? No notificado. Ok, dale. Ay, Felipe, ayúdame, ¿Vale?
It's quite normal when we start to meditate for the mind to jump around all over the place. We might find it tends to chase after all the little things, to be constantly moving about.
Qué lindo me veo. Un chino. Una gatita bonita. Ay, santo.
I was out doing a delivery one late night. It was probably the longest drive I had ever taken for a pizza delivery. From the pizza place I worked at, it was a 20-minute drive, which isn't too crazy out where I live. Plus, they ordered 4 large pies, so I figured it was a party and I would get a much bigger tip. Navigating the dirt roads at night was...
Yo voy a ser bien honesto, yo no puedo hacer un tipo de entregar pizzas porque es que este nene bien bello que tuve es loco por la pizza. A mí me encanta la pizza. Digo, ¿a quién no? Pero yo me muero por ella.
Always annoying, though. I pulled up to the given address. It was some old, sketchy-looking building, literally in the middle of a forest clearing. There were no cars parked anywhere, or any lights on. I put my car in park and called my boss.
Jesus Christ.
I asked him to reread the address at least 3 times to make sure I typed it in right, but that checked out. I could tell he was in a really bitchy mood, and he told me to at least knock on the door and check it out. He would normally get mad if we took back 1 pie, but I was afraid of what he would do if I brought back 4. I was insanely unnerved, but got out anyway and forced myself to the front door of the building. There was no doorbell, so I just knocked really hard.
Dime, Felipe.
I heard nothing and didn't really expect to hear anything. I was extremely disappointed, not because nobody answered the door, but because I was realizing that it was all a waste of time and gas. I knocked 1 more time out of desperation, and then began to hear some kind of rustling noises from inside of the building. I knocked again and yelled that I was the pizza guy. There was silence now. I felt a bit more uncomfortable now than before. But before I could turn around...
Que la gente es media estúpida porque es una si la casa se ve abandonada, ¿tú crees que hay gente que va a vivir ahí? No, ¿y por qué tú vas? Es que la gente no piensa.
I noticed something at the window. There was someone looking through the window. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I noticed were their eyes. Their eyes were open wider than I knew possible, staring intently at me. I was disturbed enough by this and dropped the pizzas and ran back to my car. The shitty thing wouldn't start until turning the key for the 3rd time. I drove off the grass and back onto the dirt road, but I felt the car rocking about, shaking and bumping. Something wasn't right. I didn't make it far from the building before I started hearing a sharp scraping sound coming from outside. There was so much resistance that I couldn't even drive. The car came to a stop. I got out of the car to check what the hell was wrong. A chill ran up my spine as I began to feel like my heart was constantly skipping beats. My tires had been slashed and had completely fallen off the rim. Not just the front, though. All 4 tires were slashed.
Ay, santo.
I realized Somebody did this when I was knocking on the door to that building. Instead of running, I got back in the car and locked the doors. I was so close to that building, I could practically see it from where I was, if it weren't for the trees blocking the view. I dialed 911 and explained everything to the operator. She told me the cops would be over as soon as possible and that I need to stay hidden.
Mierda.
I asked her if it was advisable to stay in the car or run, and she told me it would be best to stay in the car with the door locked. She asked me to stay in the
Bueno, si es que tiene un arma, porque para qué te vas a quedar en el carro si tú no tienes ninguna arma.
until the cops arrived.
Porque tú sabes si la persona está ahí
My
adentro
whole body
también.
was shaking.
¿Tú
In
te
all
imaginas que la
directions,
persona está ahí
there was
adentro?
nothing but dark,
Uy, santo.
seemingly endless forest. I knew it would take forever for the cops to get there. I was not comfortable with sitting in that car so close to whoever did this. The next part, though, is what utterly destroyed me. It still shakes me to this day, and I hope nobody ever has to experience this kind of fear. As I was scanning all the windows, making sure nobody was outside, I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was the same person. The same person I saw at that window. Eyes
Felipe, corre,
wider than ever.
corre.
I could see now that it was a woman, and I could ever so slightly see a smile begin to spread across her face. I opened my door and full-on sprinted into the woods, not caring how much noise I made. I ran until I was out of breath, which didn't take long, and I hid behind a giant log on the ground. I tried to cover my loud breathing with my hand as I waited and waited for what felt like hours until I finally heard sirens in the distance.
Uy,
I
santo.
gathered up all the stamina I had left to run all the way back in the direction of the dirt road.
Corre, Christopher, corre.
The glowing red and blue lights came into view, and I had never felt better in my life. They were parked in front of my car, investigating with flashlights. I came out yelling at them like a lunatic to help me. I fell to the floor and started to gag, almost throwing up from running so much. They picked me up and began to question me, to which I explained everything to the best of my ability. One of the two cars drove over to the building, and the two officers began to search the building. They came back with nothing except for a couple of spiky objects. These objects were exactly the same as the ones used to slash my tires. The cops guessed that it was some kind of sick, demented couple, being that I saw the woman, but unfortunately they were never found, and that still kills me to this day. I obviously quit my job right after that and started working at a local grocery store. I know that I'll never forget seeing that woman at the back of my car.
Mierda, ¿verdad? ¿Quién va a trabajar ahí otra vez? ¡Ay! ¡Ay, qué bello! Espérate. Déjenme decirle que este video va a ser largo. Yo voy a hacer como por lo menos 5 historias o 4 o
I
6,
recently
no sé.
moved out, and I already
hasta
have
que yo
a
me
horror
canse.
story to tell. The house I moved into isn't anything impressive. It's just a house that's appropriate for 1 or 2 people. But I'd say right away, I started hearing weird sounds coming from inside the walls. I first heard it in the kitchen, and then in the bathroom, but on night 3, I started hearing it in my bedroom. I was sure there was some kind of animal living in my walls. I just had to figure out how to get rid of it. The next morning, I didn't even have enough milk to fill the bowl of cereal. I couldn't believe I hadn't realized I needed more milk. In fact, I seemed to be eating up all of my food pretty fast. I woke up in the middle of that night to the sound of breathing. Not my breathing. It sounded just like the breathing of a person.
Por lo menos no es
I
un
flipped the
monstruo,
lamp
¿verdad?
on, and it stopped.
Lo que yo sepa no es un monstruo.
I chalked it up as my mind playing tricks on me after waking up. The next day was really hot, so I turned on the AC for the first time. I checked every single vent, and some of them weren't blowing any air. One of them being the vent right next to my bed. I peered through the vent with a flashlight. There wasn't even a duct behind the vent. It was just the inside of the wall. it seemed that whatever air duct was in there had been removed. Unfortunately, I didn't look into the air conditioning system while buying the house, so I didn't know about this.
Un break.
That night,
Ya regresé, así que vamos a continuar.
So I was up pretty late, constantly rolling around and flipping the pillow over. Then I eventually started to hear the breathing again, but this time I was fully awake. I knew it was real this time. It was coming to my left. I looked to my left at the air vents. The sound was surely coming from in there. I grabbed the flashlight again and shined it in through the vent. I dropped it and screamed. There was someone's face peering through the cracks of the vents. The first thing I saw were their eyes, open wide and glowing. I screamed all the way down and out the house. I soon found out there was a crazy, dangerous homeless man living in my walls, and he had been eating my food ever since I moved in.
No podemos decir que es peligroso porque si no te hubiera matado hace tiempo. Te hubiera matado hace tiempo, coger tu chavo y ya. Mira lo que bello. No te puedes caer de él porque no te mató. Por lo menos, ¿verdad? True Hunting Stories.
I was doing some night hog hunting in the woods near my backyard. I was hiding in the tower I had built about a decade ago. In case anyone's wondering, I of course had a night vision scope attachment. I guess I'm what you would consider a hardcore hunter. I don't want to bore you with the unnecessary story prolonging details, so I'll make this short. And I want everyone to know that though I agree this story sounds far-fetched and crazy, it is nothing but the truth. And I, in a way, actually consider myself lucky that I'll always have such a horrifying story to share. So, while I was sitting in the tower waiting for movement, it finally came. I took aim and found the source. But it wasn't at all a hog, or any kind of animal I was expecting. It was a person. A man wearing all black. Black sweatpants, black shoes, and a black hoodie with the hood over his head. But that wasn't the freakiest part. He was dragging a sack behind him. My heart started racing. I was pretty sure I was witnessing this guy trying to bury a body. I continued to watch him, but then he slowed down, and I swear to God, it looked as if he turned his head up to me.
Oh.
I ducked down under the wooden walls of the tower, shaking in my boots. Yes, I had a gun.
Pistola, mano, úsala. No le cojas miedo. Yo lo hubiera gritado, ¿qué tú haces? ¿Qué tú estás arrastrando ahí? Él no te puede hacer nada desde ahí. Además tú tienes la pistola.
But just the idea of using it against a person is horrifying. I lay low, praying to God that he hadn't seen me. It wouldn't make sense if he could, though. It's practically pitch black out here. Or at least, that was my logic. Seconds felt like an eternity as I waited for the footsteps in the leaves to move elsewhere, but I didn't hear any footsteps. All I heard was the sound of a foot hitting one of the wooden planks on the ladder of the tower.
Métale el tiro.
I felt the entire tower vibrate and shake as there were two more steps moving up the ladder.
Métale el tiro.
At this point, I was asking myself deep down, am I going to be able to shoot someone? But for some reason, whoever was down there decided not to climb all the way up, as I heard them jump back down to the forest ground and began dragging the sack away. I think I stayed frozen like a statue for at least 10 minutes before even peeking over the ledge again. The coast seemed clear. I had to get home and warn the police immediately. I hopped over the ledge and descended down the ladder. I turned on my pocket flashlight, which in hindsight was a stupid move considering the situation, and ran back in the direction of my house. I was only able to run for about 10 seconds or so when I heard the rapid, manic footsteps crunching the leaves from behind me. I took a look over my shoulder, and there he was, inches away from my face. I spun around and shot him in the shoulder.
Por perro.
He stopped and screamed in agony, and I took that moment to finish my dash to my house. Again, in hindsight, I should have held him hostage somehow, but that doesn't even matter now. I called the police, who showed up within 15 minutes with a whole search squad, and I led them all into the woods to the exact location where I shot him. There was a faint yet noticeable blood trail spilled onto the leaves, which led past the body bag, which the cops seized, and eventually right to the maniac, who was hiding under a log next to a tree. He was arrested and tried for the murder of Jin Quen Sakanaki, a Japanese corner store owner. I don't know the full story behind it, but I do know I won't forget this one for the rest of my life, and I'll also be telling it for the rest of my life.
Abandoned house.
I'll never forget the time me
No,
and my
no
brother
me dio
snuck
para
out
él.
past
Está
our
bien.
bedtimes to explore an allegedly haunted house down the block. Yes, I said bedtime, as I was only 10, and my brother Luke was only...
Espérate.
At the time, me and my brother snuck out past our bedtimes to explore an allegedly haunted house down the block. Yes, I said bedtime.
Parece a Chucky. Ay, santo.
As I was only 10, and my brother Luke was only 12. When our parents said goodnight to us, I went to Luke's room, and we took a couple hand-powered flashlights with us, and hopped outside through the window. Luckily, his room was on the first floor. Those hand-powered flashlights worked by constantly pushing in a little trigger that would create light inside the lens. They were noisy as hell, but they were convenient. Once we were outside, we just walked down the block, and in 2 minutes we were there. It was rumored by all the neighborhood kids and teens that the place was haunted. Everything about it was creepy. The older, more antique design of the house, the isolation from the rest of the houses, and the broken windows and rotting wood. It seemed perfect for a horror movie. We went around to the backyard.
Miren
This was
esto.
all my curious and confident brother's idea.
Mírenla.
I was scared shitless. The door was locked, as expected. I felt a bit of relief, thinking we might just go home. But my brother made a shocking move next. He grabbed a plank of wood laying in the grass and began smashing the already chipped window. Eventually there was enough of an opening to unlock it and slide it up completely. We hopped inside and began cranking those noisy-ass flashlights. Immediately after entering the house, we both picked up on the fact that it was like 90 degrees in there, which was odd as it was a September night in the mid-70s. There was no graffiti or anything anywhere. In fact, it was relatively empty besides a few pieces of furniture that were clearly not worth taking along. It seemed we were the first to enter the house, shockingly, or at least from the back. We went upstairs to the main floor from the little den area and continued cranking the flashlights. That's when we heard the slightest crack in the floorboards from right above us. We both jumped. I tugged for Luke to leave, but he told me the place is old as hell. It's just house noises. I stopped cranking the flashlight at this point, and I urged Luke to do the same, but he only called me stupid for suggesting something so ridiculous. Then there was another crack in the floorboards from above us. He began walking upstairs. I didn't want to go up there, but I was not about to stay down there alone. I followed behind him to the upstairs. There was a door that led to a room right above where we were standing. I begged him not to open it, but he must have just wanted to be the big, tough older brother. He began to reach for the doorknob while still cranking the noisy flashlight, but then he stopped. I was confused. I could see in the dark he was moving his ear up against the door, listening for something. Silence. Then, the most deafening, nightmare-inducing moment of my life. A single bang on the door from the other side sent my brother staggering into the wall in pain, covering his ear. We dropped the flashlights and ran straight out the back door and back home. We were so loud when we got back that our parents found us out. We told them what happened, but they naturally didn't care and grounded us both for a week.
Por perro.
2 nights later, I woke to the sound of something from outside my window and a glare of brightness sneaking in through my
Uy, santo. ¿Qué va a pasar? ¿Qué va a pasar?
slightly opened blind. I sat up, and my heart sank when I realized it was the sound of the crank to my flashlight. I stood up and looked out
Llegaron
the
los
window,
marcianos.
and that's when it stopped. There was nothing but complete blackness out there after that. I woke the next day barely remembering what happened, and I still hope today that that part was just a dream.
Fíjense que yo me estoy aburriendo. Pero... Ok. Pasó con
This
esto.
story took place a long time ago, back in 2002, when Craigslist was in its early years. Many wouldn't know, but back in those days, Craigslist was a lot different. It was a lot more so an online garage sale, or just a place where people would list old things that still had some value that they were willing to give away. I got a basketball hoop, a hockey net, and a spoiler for my car, all free in perfect condition in that same year. You'd be lucky if you found something like that these days. Anyway, me and my son were dying to buy a hockey net so we could practice in the cul-de-sac we lived in. For the record, this was before I got that free one I mentioned. Wouldn't you know it, on Craigslist there was an ad for a slightly used regulation-size hockey goal for only $50. It came with a puck and 2 slightly used hockey sticks. I still have a picture of that ad to this day. It seemed like the perfect deal, but he lived about 2 hours away. I called the number he had listed, and he sounded pretty normal on the phone. He had a pretty deep, dark voice, but nothing that would be off-putting. I remember his voice being a bit emotionless. He agreed to meet halfway due to the distance. Said he'd put the stuff in the pickup truck. He said he could only come after he got off from work, though, which was much later in the day, way past dark. We agreed to meet at some rest stop off the highway. Me and my son, who was 11 at the time, took my wife's minivan, the only car that would be able to fit that huge thing. Within an hour, we were at the truck stop, which was empty at this hour, but was decently lit by 3 big light posts. I parked right under one of the lights and waited.
Ah, no, esta yo la vi, fíjate.
The truck pulled in off the highway right on time.
Me aburrida.
Weren't very loyal to whoever their leader was. Get into all the...
Sí, así que vamos a ver la otra historia porque esa ya la he visto ya.
I didn't go to medical school to be a hero.
Where 3 lighthouse keepers lived and were
También este
responsible
lo
for
vi.
keeping the building.
Yo he visto la
Nowhere
mayoría
to
de
be
esto,
found.
fíjate.
The rest of my way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder. Realized something. Here. To say at this point that I read
Ay, Dios mío,
tiptoed
señor.
steps, as if you were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. I looked back to where tall and lanky and wearing an old... It was a Wednesday, somewhere
Mira.
between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I went down a short side street in order to loop back down my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows,
No veo
but
nada.
I was certain he was facing me.
No veo nada.
I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked, and I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point that I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or cell phone or anything
Pepper
at all.
spray, diablo.
But I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling a smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the fuck? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice. That only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance-walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him got bigger and bigger. He was coming back my way. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of my way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high.
Pasó Orochimaru.
Completely and utterly insane.
Orochimaru el de Naruto.
And that's a very, very scary thing to see.
Ok. True camping story. Yo creo que con esta terminamos. Sí, con esta terminamos.
So me and a couple of my buddies went camping last summer alongside the Willamette River. We actually had a decent hike
Ya
into the
no.
deep end of
Luigi. El del jaque verde. Mario, el del suéter rojo. Waluigi, el del suéter gris. Y Wario, el del suéter verde. Está bien.
We did some night fishing, listening to music, and basically drank to the point where everything was funny later in the night. I would guess we finally called it a night somewhere past 2 a.m. I shared a tent with one of my buds, while the other two shared another tent. We heard them laughing about something. At first we laughed at the sound of their laughing, but it soon got annoying and we yelled for them to shut up. One of them responded, "It isn't us." I sat up, startled at the response. I came to realize that it was the sound of only one person laughing, and it didn't sound like either one of my friends. Even in my drunk state, I realized how odd it was for somebody to be out this far in the woods so late at night. The laughing gradually got closer and louder to our campout, My friend shot up and looked at me with a worried look on his face. I heard my other friends scream over to us that they were getting freaked out. As the laughing got even closer, I could make it out very clearly to be the laugh of a male, probably in his 30s or 40s. He sounded like he was as drunk as us, messing around with friends, but we only heard his laugh, nobody else. There was something indescribably creepy about his laugh, too, as if it was missing something to it. You had to be there to understand what I mean. The laughing was now just at the edge of our campsite. But we couldn't hear any footsteps at all. Now that may not seem like a big deal. It was impossible to move through that without making noise. And finally, all of a sudden, the laughing stopped completely. We had no idea where whoever that was standing, as he hadn't made a single stepping sound. We sat there in silence looking at each other. My friend was clearly freaking out, but he was keeping it together the best he could. Finally, something broke the silence. The sound of something rubbing against the cottony fabric of the tent. We saw the outline of a hand through the moonlight, pressing on the tent. We both screamed at the top of our lungs before getting out of the tent. We ran as fast as we could through the woods, our other friends following us. After about 5 minutes of running, we somehow found our car. I actually puked from running so much before taking the wheel. I don't condone drinking and driving, but I still believe we were just in this situation. By far the most horrific experience of my life. No idea who or what the hell that was, or what they wanted.
Un video más. Vamos a ver un video más. I must have read into reality. Se escucha bueno.
I was having a horrifying dream, possibly the most disturbing nightmare of my life. I was in my house, or the closest thing to my house that my dream could in this dream, or at least I can only start remembering past the point of my lying in bed. And all of a sudden, the sound came from downstairs. I walked downstairs in the dark, not turning on any lights, to where I thought the sound was coming from. I was on my middle floor now. The dream was telling me to go downstairs to my laundry room, and so I did. But as I got there, expecting the noise to be louder and closer, it sounded like it was just as far as before. Now I was going upstairs to the kitchen, and it's strange. Outside of every window was complete blackness, not general nighttime darkness. There was nothingness. I think all that existed in this dream was my house. Now my dream started to suggest that the banging sounds were coming from upstairs, so I went back upstairs and was eventually led to the attic door. It was surely beyond that door. I opened it. There was an old woman standing by a bunch of boxes. She was slowly but loudly slamming her hand on one of the boxes, producing an unnatural sound.
Abuelita.
I tried to quietly step back away from the attic, but the old woman turned around, opened her mouth twice as wide as anyone humanly could, reached out her arms, began to scream, and leap toward me. That's when I woke up. I thought it was just a horrific dream, but when I heard a bang coming from downstairs, a bang similar to what I heard in my dream,
¿Sabes qué? Lo voy a dejar ahí. Y el video es casi 35 minutos. Espero que les haya gustado. Den un like y suscríbanse. Y, ¿verdad? Hasta el próximo video.